The sound of baccarat crystal shattering against the imported marble floor silenced the ballroom instantly. It wasn't an accident. Alexander Sterling, heir to one of New York's largest real estate empires, had dropped his champagne flute on purpose. 300 guests, the city's elite, senators, tech moguls, and socialites, froze in place. The music stopped. The laughter died. Alexander stood at the head of the long banquet table, his tuxedo impeccable, but his face pale. Beside him, Isabella, his stunning fiancée wearing a silk dress that cost more than a mid-sized car, gripped his arm. Her nails dug sharply into his jacket. "Alex, what are you doing? Are you drunk?" she hissed through a frozen, camera-ready smile. Alexander wasn't drunk. He was terrified, or at least he needed every single person in this room to believe he was. He looked out at the sea of faces. These were people who drank his wine, laughed at his unfunny jokes, and surrounded him only because he was worth billions. He took a breath, letting his voice tremble just enough to sell the lie. "I apologize for interrupting the rehearsal dinner," he began, his voice echoing in the dead silence. "But I just received a phone call 10 minutes ago that I cannot ignore." Isabella let out a nervous, tinkling laugh. "Alex, darling, save the speeches for the wedding on Saturday." Alexander turned to her. The look in his eyes was hollow. "There won't be a wedding on Saturday, Bella." The smile slid off her face like melting wax. "What? The Securities and Exchange Commission just froze my assets," Alexander announced to the room. "Sterling Enterprises is under federal investigation for massive fraud and embezzlement. It's all over the news." A collective gasp swept through the room. Someone dropped a fork. Phones were pulled out of pockets. "My personal accounts have been locked," Alexander continued, playing the role of his life. "The properties, the investments, the cars. Federal agents will be here in the morning to confiscate everything. I am bankrupt. Worse than bankrupt. I'm in debt for millions I don't have." He turned fully to Isabella, searching her eyes. He was looking for compassion. For panic, yes, but panic for him, not for his wallet. "Bella, I'm so sorry. We're going to lose the penthouse. We're going to lose the Hamptons house. We have to start from zero." He reached out his hand to her, palm open. "But as long as I have you, I know we can survive this. It's just money, right? We have each other." The silence that followed lasted only 5 seconds, but to Alexander, it stretched into an eternity. Isabella looked at his outstretched hand as if it were covered in mud. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped back. The mask of adoration she had worn for 2 years vanished. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. "You have to be joking," she said, her voice icy loud. "Fraud? Confiscation? You're telling me you're a criminal?" "It's a mistake, Bella, but it will take years to clear my name. I need you by my side. We made vows." Isabella laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "We haven't made vows yet, Alex. That was supposed to happen Saturday." "I thought you loved me," he whispered, the pain in his voice almost too real. "I loved the future we were supposed to have," she snapped. "I am marrying a billionaire, Alexander. Not a convict, not a failure." She looked down at the 5-carat diamond ring on her finger. For a second, Alexander thought she might return it. Instead, she twisted it, admiring the stone one last time. "Consider this severance pay for my wasted time." Without a backward glance, Isabella grabbed her Hermes bag and marched out of the ballroom. And then the exodus began. Like rats fleeing a sinking ship, Alexander's best friends, his business partners, the people who claimed to be family, they all stood up. Murmuring fake apologies, checking their watches, avoiding eye contact, they streamed out of the doors. In 15 minutes, the ballroom, decorated with $50,000 worth of white roses, was empty. Alexander stood alone in the wreckage of his life. Well, not entirely alone. In the far corner near the service entrance, a shadow moved. It was Mia. The young maid, who had been hired 6 months ago to clean the estate. She was holding a silver tray against her chest, her knuckles white. She was wearing a uniform that was slightly too big for her. She had seen everything, and her large brown eyes were filled with tears, not for herself, but for him. 3 days had passed since the rehearsal dinner. The Sterling mansion in Long Island had never felt so massive or so hauntingly quiet. Isabella hadn't called. Her lawyers had, though. They threatened a lawsuit for emotional distress and breach of promise. Alexander had dismissed the entire staff the morning after the announcement. The butler, the Michelin star chef, the drivers, the groundskeepers. He told them the truth, or his version of it. I can't pay you anymore. Most of them left immediately, some even grabbing bottles of expensive wine from the cellar as compensation before walking out. Now Alexander sat on the floor of his $30,000 kitchen, leaning against the cold marble island. He was wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants. He hadn't shaved. He had turned off the central heating to simulate cutting costs, just in case anyone was watching the utility meters. The house was freezing. His stomach growled. He looked at the massive sub-zero fridge. It was empty, save for a few bottles of sparkling water and some wilted arugula. He realized, with a pathetic laugh, that he didn't know how to cook. He had never needed to. His entire life had been served to him. Suddenly, he heard the creak of the back service door. His heart jumped. Isabella! Had she realized she was wrong? Had she come back? He scrambled to his feet and walked into the hallway. It wasn't Isabella. It was Mia. She wasn't in her uniform. She was wearing worn-out jeans, a thick beige sweater that had seen better days, and old sneakers. Her hands were full, gripping 2 plastic grocery bags. Mia, Alexander asked, confused. I fired everyone on Monday. Didn't you get the notice? Mia froze, her cheeks turning pink. She carefully set the bags down on the floor. I got it, Mr. Sterling, but I figured you might be hungry. Alexander blinked. Hungry? Well, she started, fidgeting with her sleeve. The chef left in a hurry, and I know the pantry was almost empty when I cleaned it last week. She looked down. I saw the news about the frozen accounts. I know you can't buy anything. I can't pay you, Mia, Alexander said harshly, trying to maintain the charade. I have nothing. I can't even reimburse you for whatever is in those bags. Mia looked up, and for the first time, Alexander saw a quiet strength in her gaze he had never noticed before. I didn't ask for payment, sir. I bought this with my own money. It's not much. Pasta, eggs, bread, some milk. But it's food. Alexander felt a lump form in his throat. This girl, who he barely acknowledged beyond a distracted good morning, was spending her minimum wage to feed a bankrupt billionaire. Why would you do that? He asked, his voice rough. Everyone left. Isabella left. My friends left. Mia shrugged, a small, humble gesture. My grandmother always says, when the boat capsizes, you find out who can swim and who was just there for the tan. She offered a small, shy smile. You were always kind to me, Mr. Sterling. You never yelled when I broke that vase last year. You asked about my health when I had the flu. Alexander remembered vaguely. He had asked out of politeness, but to her, it meant he saw her as human. Come in, he said, stepping aside. Please. Mia walked into the spaceship-like kitchen and began unpacking the simple groceries. Alexander watched her. She moved efficiently, but with a grace that didn't belong in a kitchen this cold. Do you know how to cook? He asked, feeling useless. Mia laughed, a soft sound that bounced off the empty walls. When you have 3 younger brothers and a sick grandma, you learn to make a feast out of potatoes and hope. She made a simple omelette with cheese and toast. The smell of melting butter filled the air, replacing the scent of expensive polish and emptiness. They ate in silence at the counter. Alexander took the first bite and closed his eyes. This is incredible, he mumbled. It tasted like care. Mr. Sterling, Mia began. Alex, he corrected. I'm not Mr. Sterling the tycoon anymore. I'm just Alex, the guy who lost it all. Alex, she tested the name. What will you do now? He looked at her, evaluating. The test was just beginning. I don't know, Mia. The bank will likely seize the house next week. I'll have to find a cheap apartment, maybe a job in construction. Start over. He waited for her to recoil, for the reality of poverty to scare her away. Instead, she nodded seriously. If you need help looking, I know some places in Queens. The walls are thin and the trains are loud, but it's clean and it's safe. She was offering him entry into her world, without judgment, without pity, just solidarity. You would help me move to a place like that? A poor place isn't a bad place, Alex, she said softly. Sometimes it's where you find the richest things. That night, Alexander went to his master bedroom, but couldn't sleep in the king-sized bed. He thought about Isabella and her demands for luxury, and he thought about Mia and her scrambled eggs. For the first time in his life, he realized how poor he had actually been until this moment. The next few days settled into a strange, beautiful routine. Mia came by every afternoon after her other morning shift at a diner. She insisted on helping him pack boxes for his impending eviction. They spent hours side by side. Alexander, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, learning how to fold clothes to save space, learning how to clean windows with vinegar and newspaper. You hold the cloth like this, Mia instructed, her hand guiding his over the glass pane. Her touch was electric, a warm current that shot up his arm. Alexander held his breath. Sorry. She pulled her hand back quickly. Don't be, he said, his voice low. No one ever taught me how to take care of my own life. On Thursday afternoon, a massive summer storm rolled over Long Island. The sky turned bruised purple, and thunder shook the foundations of the house. Suddenly, the power cut. The mansion plunged into darkness. Alexander found Mia in the living room, trying to light some decorative candles that Isabella had strictly forbidden anyone from touching. In the flickering candlelight, Mia's face looked ethereal, soft, golden, full of secrets. They sat on the plush rug, listening to the rain hammer against the panoramic windows. Tell me about you, Mia, Alexander asked. The real you, not the employee, the woman. Mia hugged her knees to her chest. There isn't much to tell. I'm 24. I take care of my grandma Rosa because my mom left when I was little. She looked at the flame. My dream was to be a nurse. I got into nursing school, you know, but I had to drop out when Grandma got worse. The meds, they cost everything we have. Alexander felt a sharp pang of guilt. He spent more on a single dinner than her entire tuition would cost. You gave up your dream for her? I didn't give it up, she corrected, eyes fierce. I postponed it. Family comes first, Alex. Love is a verb. It's not a feeling. It's what you do. Love is a verb. The phrase echoed in Alexander's mind. Isabella said, I love you constantly, but she never did anything. Mia never said it, but she acted it every second. What about you, Alex? She asked. What was your dream before the money? I wanted to be an architect, he confessed. It was a secret he hadn't spoken aloud in 10 years. I wanted to build homes, not real estate empires. I wanted to design spaces where people felt safe. But my father, he wanted a CEO, not an artist. You still can, Mia said, touching his arm impulsively. Now that you've lost the company, maybe you're finally free to be the architect. Alexander stared at her, stunned. She saw his bankruptcy not as a tragedy, but as a liberation. In that moment, he almost told her. He almost said, I have billions. I can pay for your school right now. But he needed to be sure. He needed to know if this feeling expanding in his chest was real. Maybe, he whispered. Maybe you're right. He leaned in slightly. Mia stopped breathing, her lips parting, the distance between them closed. She smelled of rain and cheap lavender soap, and it was better than any French perfume he'd ever known. But then Mia's phone rang, shattering the spell. She looked at the screen and turned pale. "It's the hospital," she gasped. "It's Grandma." Alexander insisted on driving her. He took one of the old service sedans from the garage to keep his cover. When they walked into the public city hospital, reality hit Alexander like a physical blow. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The waiting room was packed. People groaned in pain on plastic chairs. It smelled of antiseptic and hopelessness. Mia ran to the nurse's station. Rosa Martinez. She came in with respiratory failure. The nurse, overworked and exhausted, didn't even look up. "Sit down and wait, honey. The doctor is in trauma. We'll get to her when we can." "But she's 80. She can't breathe," Mia pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Alexander felt a rage bubbling up inside him, that billionaire arrogance he had been suppressing. He wanted to slam his hand on the desk and scream, "Do you know who I am? Treat her now." But he couldn't. He was Alex, the bankrupt failure. He pulled Mia into a hug. She collapsed against his chest, sobbing. "I don't have the money for private care," she cried into his shirt. "If she dies, Alex, I don't know what I'll do." Alexander held her face between his hands. "She is not going to die. I promise you." He stepped away, pretending to get water. He found a quiet corridor and pulled out a sleek black phone he had kept hidden. "James," he whispered to his personal assistant, who was in on the plan, "transfer an anonymous donation to City General Hospital right now. Earmark it specifically for the treatment of Rosa Martinez. I want the head of pulmonary medicine down here in 20 minutes. Tell them it's a charity angel program. Do not use my name." 20 minutes later, the chaos transformed into order. A senior specialist appeared, calling for Rosa Martinez. Nurses moved with sudden urgency. Mia looked at Alexander, confused and terrified, as her grandmother was moved to a private room. "They said a charity fund covered everything," she stammered. "It's a miracle." "Good things happen to good people, Mia," Alexander said, fighting to keep his voice steady. They spent the night in the uncomfortable chairs beside Rosa's bed. In the early hours of the morning, with her grandmother stable and sleeping, Mia reached for Alexander's hand. "Thank you for being here. You're losing everything, your home, your company, and yet you're here holding my hand in a dirty hospital." She kissed his knuckles, a gesture of pure devotion. "I love you, Alex," she whispered, so quiet he almost missed it. "I don't care if you live in a mansion or under a bridge. I love who you are." Alexander's heart stopped. He had everything he needed. The test was over. 2 days later, they were back at the mansion. Alexander told Mia he needed to grab the last few boxes. While they were taping up a box of books in the main foyer, the front door burst open. Isabella marched in, wearing oversized sunglasses and looking furious. She stopped when she saw them. "Oh, isn't this touching?" she sneered, taking off her glasses. "The prince and the pauper." "What do you want, Isabella?" Alexander asked, stepping in front of Mia. "I came for the Picasso in the study. My lawyer says it was technically an engagement gift, so it's mine before the bank seizes it." She looked at Mia with unmasked disgust. "And I see you've already found comfort in the arms of the help. How far you've fallen, Alex. From me to this, she smells like bleach and desperation." Mia lowered her head, humiliated. That was it, the final straw. "Watch how you speak to her," Alexander said. His voice dropped an octave, vibrating with an authority he hadn't used in weeks. "She has more class in her dirty work finger than you have in your entire body, Isabella." Isabella laughed. "Class? She's a nobody, Alex. And now so are you. You deserve each other. Two losers." She tried to push past them toward the study. "Stop!" Alexander ordered. It wasn't a request. It was a command. He turned to Mia. "Mia, do you trust me?" Mia looked at him, eyes wide, but she nodded. "Always." "Then come with me." He grabbed her hand. "Where are you going?" Isabella shouted. "I want my painting." "You can keep the fake painting, Isabella. It's a copy, just like you," Alexander called over his shoulder. He led Mia not to the old sedan, but to a hidden panel in the wall. He punched in a code. The wall slid open, revealing the pristine, underground garage. Isabella, who had followed them, stopped dead. Her mouth fell open. Inside, gleaming under museum lights, was Alexander's collection, Ferraris, Bugattis, and right in front, a phantom Rolls-Royce. "What? But the bank," Isabella stammered. Alexander opened the door of the Rolls-Royce for Mia. "Get in, my love." He turned to Isabella one last time. "There was no bankruptcy, Isabella. There was no investigation. There was only a test to see if you loved the man or the money." Isabella's face went white as a sheet. "Alex, wait, it was a joke?" "You failed," he said coldly. "Security!" From the shadows, 3 men in black suits stepped out. They had been guarding the perimeter the entire time. "Remove this trespasser from my property. If she returns, call the police." Alex, I love you. I was just stressed," Isabella screamed as she was escorted out, her heels dragging on the concrete. Alexander got into the car and shut the heavy door, sealing out her screams. The luxurious silence of the Rolls-Royce enveloped them. Mia was pressed against the soft leather seat, trembling. "Alex, what is happening? The car, the security." Alexander took her hands. They were rough from work, and he kissed them. "Forgive me, Mia. Forgive me for the lie. I had to know." He explained everything. The fear of being used, the desperate plan, the acting. "I have everything, Mia, the company, the money, the houses, but I realized I had nothing until 3 days ago." Mia pulled her hands back, scared. You really are a billionaire. You lied about needing help, about me teaching you to clean." "No," he said quickly. "I didn't lie about needing help. I didn't know how to live, Mia. You taught me what a home is. You taught me that a meal isn't about the price. It's about who makes it." He reached into his pocket. It wasn't the 5-carat diamond Isabella had worn. It was a simple, delicate white gold band he had asked James to buy that morning. "I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But you told me you loved me when I had nothing. That tells me you are the only woman in the world I can trust with my life." The car slowed to a stop. Mia looked out the window. They weren't at a fancy restaurant. They were in front of the City Nursing College. "Why are we here?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Because your dream doesn't need to be postponed anymore," Alexander said. "Your grandmother will have private nurses at home, 24/7. You are going to finish your degree, and you are going to do it without worrying about a single bill." Mia started to cry, but this time they were tears of relief, of a weight being lifted after years of struggle. "I don't want your money, Alex," she sobbed. "I know," he smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. "That's exactly why it's all yours." 6 months later. The society pages didn't talk about scandals. They talked about the wedding of the year. But it wasn't in a ballroom. It was in the mansion's garden, simple, elegant, overflowing with wildflowers. Mia wore a white dress, not from a designer, but one she chose herself. In the front row, Grandma Rosa, fully recovered and beaming from a wheelchair, cried tears of joy. Alexander waited at the altar. When he saw Mia walking toward him, he didn't see the former maid. He saw the woman who saved him when he thought he was testing her. From outside the gates, far away, paparazzi snapped a photo of a blonde woman trying to peek in. It was Isabella. She looked tired, wearing last season's clothes, locked out of the paradise she had rejected. But Alexander didn't even look at the gates. He only had eyes for Mia. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Alexander whispered in her ear, "Thank you for loving me when I was nobody." And Mia, the new Mrs. Sterling, the woman who once scrubbed the floors of this very house, smiled. "You were never nobody to me, Alex. You were the man who held my hand." And as they walked down the aisle, under a shower of petals, Alexander knew one thing. He might have billions in the bank, but his true fortune was holding his hand right now. Have you ever imagined being loved only for who you are? If Alex and Mia's story touched your heart, please like and subscribe. Tell us in the comments, would you have forgiven Isabella? Until the next story.